1970s History on Paper. Richard Nixon was president from 1969 to 1974. He was elected because he told the people he was going to restore law and order and cut back Democratic programs. He used the Southern strategy to win the conservative Southern white voters away from the Democratic Party and promised not to ask for any new civil rights legislation. Nixon also had to turn around a struggling economy because of high government spending, inflation, and unemployment increase, which was called stagflation. Another crisis that Nixon dealt with was the energy crisis in 1973 and 74. This was caused by oil prices quadrupling. Many Americans suspected that Arab oil companies kept prices unnecessarily high to make a profit. Americans' concern for the environment caused Congress to pass several environmental safety programs. For example, the Clean Air Act made air quality and emissions standards for car manufacturers, and the Water Quality Act forced oil companies to pay for the cleanup costs of the oil spills they cause. This also led to the first Earth Day celebrated in 1970. Nixon's foreign policy was known as realpolitik or practical politics. It was an approach that focused on natural interest rather than moral or ethical concerns. Another main goal of Nixon's foreign policy was to establish a balance of power and reduce conflict between nations. Nixon was reelected in a landslide victory. 2 years later, Nixon was suspected of being involved in a series of legal actions. He tried to sabotage the reputation of anyone working against him in an effort to get information. 5 men were caught at the Watergate building in the offices of the Democratic National Committee with spy equipment. Nixon resigned as a result in 1974. Soon after, Gerald Ford took office on August 9, 1974, after Nixon resigned and was in office until 1977. A month after taking office, President Ford guaranteed Nixon a full pardon and lost a huge amount of his popularity overnight. One of Ford's main goals was to fight inflation that was still being fueled by the energy crisis. He tried to fix economic problems by cutting government spending, but this only made the situation worse. In 1977, Jimmy Carter was president through 1981. He announced a full pardon for most Vietnam-era draft evaders to smooth over wartime tensions. Carter's attempts to fix the economy by implementing a corporate tax cut helped by reducing unemployment, but it also fueled inflation. Despite President Carter's efforts, events in the world affected the nation's energy supply. Carter rejected Nixon's realpolitik and ran foreign policy with respect to human rights. His approach helped to smooth relations in Africa and ease tension from the Cold War. By the end of his term, Carter's popularity had fallen to 21%, and he was not reelected. As the population wasn't growing and the divorce rate was, but the music was fun, right? The 70s saw great artists such as Elton John, Bruce Springsteen, AC/DC, Pink Floyd, The Carpenters, and the Eagles. Unfortunately, the decade also saw the end of Elvis Presley and Bill Cosby. The 70s have been called the golden age of video arcade games because of games such as Pong, Asteroids, Space Invaders, and Snakes were popular during this era. The Charlie's Angels and Happy Days were popular TV shows during the 1970s. Popular movies of this time included the Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Godfather, Rocky, Star Wars, Jaws, and Grease. As this time was crazy, so was the fashion. Clothing in the 70s were influenced by the hippie movement. Bell-bottoms, platform shoes, and feathery haircuts were popular among men and women. Men also had sideburns, beards, and afros. So, in conclusion, the 70s saw scandal, economic problems, and an increase in environmental concern, as well as some crazy froze.